Okay, welcome back to Tina Schmidt's Animal Drawing Workshop, and we are going to now do what many of my students ask for a lot, is horses. So I am now videotaping with one hand and gesture drawing with the other, so bear with me if we get a little off screen here once in a while. Right now, the way I approach the drawing is through the gesture, and I like to make the gesture nice and loose. Let me get a little close up there. This allows you to have playroom to change the gesture as the drawing develops. You try to lock everything in too soon, you end up in trouble, and then you can't change it. So I would always say try to handle all your proportion issues, all of those easy to fix things in the very beginning. Now when I do a gesture, what I do is I try to lay in the basic shapes, and these are primitive shapes. They're not necessarily with the shapes you're going to absolutely end up with 100%, but they get you into the ballpark of developing this animal. So you can see here as I start the gesture, I'm not really worried about a whole lot of detail yet. Just sort of locking in some quick forms. I shouldn't even call it locking in. We're just setting in some forms here, and then we'll start thinking about the anatomy in a little bit. So right now it's really about just finding that basic shape, the basic shape of the animal. And I always refer my students to anatomy, like the scapula, which would be coming down here at the humeral juncture. You've got the humerus bone, you got the ulna and the radial, and coming down to make the legs. So we got the front leg here, starting with a wireframe. Now the wireframe allows you to sort of see it as it would if it was more like a skeleton. And then later you start to flesh it out. So we've got the pelvic iliac crest down to the ischium, which is the butt bone, go 2/3 back, gives you the femur coming forward to the patella. Of course, then we have the tibia and fibula. We're going back in perspective now, following this animal. Tibia, fibula to the tarsus and the calcaneus, and we finish out the draftsmanship, placement of the leg in proportion. Now, not all the animals are going to be a little bit of different proportions. These horses, some are short, some are tall, so you're going to find it may change from horse to horse. Now I'm going to pull the camera back just a little. I'm going to see what we're doing. So he's in a 3/4 front view, and I'm making sure that I've got all the parts that are going to be in perspective and at least feel like they're in proportion. This is the spot in the drawing, the time to fix proportion. You don't go up here and start noodling around and falling in love with the facial features when the rest of the dynamics of the animal are not in proportion. So try to fix it at this point when it's still changeable. Okay? Now I'm going to move along here and come in close to the head. Now that's my first pass. I've got my armature and some of the form. Now I'm going to go in for my second pass, and I'm going to start working the form a little more truer. Okay. And I'm using a sanguine Carbothello pencil. It's the 1400/645. And I like this because it's a soft pencil. I get a nice edge if I want, or a soft kind of feel to it. Coming out here to the scapula, we know the neck emerge from what I call the shoulder girdle, this area here. And we're going to bring that scapula out and of course attach that with the tricep. And then you've got the deltoid caps, okay, around the humerus bone down here, and we begin to flesh out the form. So now we're starting to think a little bit of the extensor muscles. and come down here through the leg. This is the first part of the form we're concerned about. Then you have the carpals, which is the true wrist bone, is the carpals. Okay, metacarpal. And you look at that hoof. The hoof is 3 digits. It's actually the finger part of the horse that comes out to make up that hoof. And so there's 3 little bones, 1, 2, and 3, that are interlocked inside there. Okay, now I come back out for the other side, finding the other side of that shoulder and coming down. Okay, and the emerging, there's the pectoralis. You got the pectoralis here, and the emerging of the extensors and the flexors on the medial, the inner part, extensors on the outer part of the front leg, and the wrist. Since this leg is behind, see, he's in perspective. It's going, he's got the closer leg, the front leg here. This other front leg is, the right leg is further from us, so it's going to be a little offset. Okay. Now I'm holding this camera with my hand till I get a better setup. So if I run off screen, I'll do the best I can to get it back on while I'm drawing at the same time. Okay. So there's that hoof. Okay. Now I come up here and I begin to full out that form a little bit. See, there's the sternum. Full out that rib cage. Just fill that out. Drop the top line a little. See, start to fill where that pelvis is on one side, find it on the other. Come around the haunches. And there's a whole bunch of muscles here. We'll worry about those in a minute. On this first 10-minute frame of this first part of this workshop, I'm just worried now about grabbing the form. So as I grab that form, those crude shapes that make up the mass, on the next pass, on the next video, I'll start working more on the detail. But right now we're just getting in some of the foundational shapes, fundamentals. We'll detail them out as we go. Okay, so coming back here, finding across the horse's belly, underneath to the other side, lining up and finding the other leg in space, finding that form. Okay, and we come down to make out the hoof, the leg. Okay, now I'll come over here to the tail. Handle the tail very lightly, not heavily. I'm going to make another little bit of notation here up on the head and come in for the ears a little bit. Get a little eye detail. Open the nostril, find the soft tissue of the nostril, the side plane of the mouth, wrapping around the front for the muzzle and the jaw. The molars, the ridge of the cheek, the windpipe. Okay, there's a whole bunch of muscles in here, which for this video is too short to get into all of them, but we could certainly mention that in our next, we'll mention some of that in our next drawing. So there's the fundamental beginning of the horse.